Hello, and welcome to today's story. If you enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more. The story you're about to hear is based on accounts and rumors. Its full truth can't be confirmed. Now sit back, relax, and let's dive right in. Throwaway because I don't want this tied to my work account. If you recognize the road, keep it to yourself. I've already changed too many routes. I deliver for a regional medical lab at night. Blood, biopsies, things you don't think about after you hand over a vial. It's decent money and bad hours, and the car smells like disinfectant, even after I stop trying to make it smell better. I take the same loop 5 nights a week. Hospice on the north end, urgent care by the mall, the private clinic with the fountain that never runs in winter, then back to the lab before dawn. The hitchhiker was between the mall and the clinic on that long, shoulderless stretch where the lights are too far apart and the trees feel like they'd lean in if they could. It was late March, wet enough that my wipers made that rubber squeal. I saw the shape at the edge of my high beams and did what you do. In stories you swear you'd never live. I slowed. He wore layers that didn't match a season. Army jacket, thin t-shirt, jeans that had seen too many floors. No bag. He had his thumb out in a lazy way, like he decided to pretend thumb hitching still works. I rolled the passenger window halfway down, because that's the compromise you make between fear and decency. He stepped closer. I said I was going north for a few miles if he needed a lift. He nodded once and opened the back door instead of the front. He sat on the passenger side of the back seat and pulled the belt across his chest with slow care. The click sounded louder than it should have. He didn't say thanks. He didn't say anything. He looked ahead, not at the back of my head, but at where the road became a line. Humans pretend equals the future. I pulled back into my lane. The tires sucked water. I asked where he was headed. Nothing. I told him I had a thermos of coffee if he wanted some. Nothing. The only sound was the belt retractor adjusting with each of my stop-starts. That tight little whir. The weight sensor on my dash lit. Passenger airbag on. That's what it does when the front seat has a person in it heavy enough to trigger it. The front seat was empty. The light stayed on. I glanced in the rear view. He was there, fuzzy in the dark, eyes not catching any light. He didn't look dangerous. He didn't look anything. The kind of face your brain would forget a minute after seeing it in a crowd. We passed the mile marker with the broken reflector and the stain nobody repaves. He raised his right hand and pointed one finger, like a parent telling a child where to stand. I said I had a stop at the clinic. He pointed again, same finger, same angle. I said I'd circle back. He kept pointing. There's a turnoff there, a maintenance road that runs parallel to the highway for a quarter mile before it becomes dirt and then becomes nothing. I didn't want to take it. I took it because the finger kept pointing and because it's easier to be weird than to be rude to someone behind you. We bumped along the gravel. The belt in the back tugged once like it was reminding itself how to be a belt. He lowered his hand, then raised it again, the same gesture, and I realized he was pointing at the right side of the road where the trees opened to a shallow ditch. Headlights found a cluster of things you see too often in my line. Faded ribbon, a plastic cross, the kind of little solar light that is supposed to glow after dark and dies anyway. A memorial. The night had that smell like penny rain. The seatbelt clicked. I didn't look. I kept my hands at 10 and 2 because that's what you do when you're pretending you weren't just coerced into visiting grief. The weight sensor light stayed on. The belt in the back still crossed nobody. Okay, I said, because you say okay at graves even when nobody asks. Okay. I put the car in park. The wipers squeaked once and stopped in the wrong place. He didn't move. The sticky part of my brain whispered a name I didn't know. I kept my eyes on the dash. The clock didn't change for longer than a minute lasts. I pulled away. The belt retractor made that polite whir, and the click of a buckle being guided back into place sounded like a door closing down the hall. The passenger airbag on light stayed lit until the highway light swallowed us, and then it blinked off like it had remembered how to be a rule. I delivered to the clinic with hands that shook enough to make the signature pad throw errors. The nurse on nights asked if I'd seen a ghost, then laughed at herself and told me to drive safe. I told her I'd try. I didn't mean it. He was back the next night. Same stretch, same posture, same slow climb into the back, belt across his chest like he had already decided to obey a law he didn't need anymore. I told myself I was imagining him because that's how we stay functional. He pointed with that one finger at the same place with the same insistence. We went. The memorial looked wetter. The ribbon clung like a second skin. The little light glowed weakly where last night it had been dead. And the irrational part of me wanted to unscrew it and pocket it because I don't like things telling me they know better. I started talking at him because silence began to feel like a third person in the car. About deliveries, about the night my tire blew and I changed it badly and a stranger pulled over to hand me a better jack, like a priest with a sacrament. About the time a kid in scrubs walked out of the clinic after a shift and cried into the back of his hands until his palms got bored. About anything that wasn't the belt, crossing an absence. He never answered. He pointed, we turned, we stopped. I said, okay. He unbuckled when he wanted to unbuckle, and the passenger airbag on light behaved like a dog, trained to come when called. Except sometimes it stayed because it had a reason you can't hear. On the fourth night, I gave in to my worst habit and Googled. The memorial belonged to a boy who had died there 3 years before I got the job. Car into a tree. Late. Wet. He hadn't been found until morning. The article mentioned a fundraiser to add a streetlight to that stretch. The comments were the same as they always are. Drive safe. Hold your loved ones. We need more patrols. No mention of hitchhikers. No mention of belts that click without hands. I didn't pick him up the fifth night. I saw him, saw the jacket in my beams, saw that patient thumb, and I drove on. I checked my mirrors too much and almost clipped a parked car and felt that shame nausea you get when you do something that proves you are not the person you want to be. The belt in the back crossed by itself. The sound of the buckle sliding across fabric happened without the pressure of a body. The passenger airbag on light blinked itself alive. I didn't take my foot off the gas. The seat behind me creaked as if someone had shifted their weight to look out the passenger window at the trees rushing away. I took the long way. The light stayed on for 7 minutes. Then it went dark, and the belt retraced itself with a lazy roll like a yawn. I drove the rest of the loop with both windows down, even though it was cold, because I needed the air to feel earned. After that, ignoring didn't work. I could drive past him and count to 7, and the belt would cross, and the light would come on, and the smell in the car would change to damp pennies and the poor copy of laundry soap that clings to thrift. If I stopped and let him in, the ride was short. If I didn't, he rode all the way until he wanted to arrive, and then he went, like he had never learned how to slam a door. We developed a routine. I told myself, routines are how you domesticate fear. He pointed, I went. Sometimes he pointed somewhere else, once a cul-de-sac where the houses had their porch lights on like teeth. Once a turnoff by the river where there were no memorials, but there could have been. Once to the lot behind the high school where kids go to decide which mistakes they can live with. The only constant was the finger and the belt. I started bringing things, a bottle of water, a blanket. Stupid, I know. You can't cover cold that isn't coming from skin. I placed the blanket on the back seat anyway, on nights when the weight sensor lit itself before I pulled from the curb. It was damp when I took it out in the morning, not wet enough to ring, damp the way cloth gets when a window was left open just wide enough for air to realize it could come in. One night I stopped taking the clinic run. Route still paid. The lab didn't care how the boxes moved as long as signatures happened. I took the turn my passenger wanted first. He pointed at the place with the ribbon. I put the car in park and turned the interior light on and said I'd wait as long as he wanted. The light didn't reach him. The belt was a line across a shape my eyes refused to resolve. This time he moved. Slow, but a move, a lean like something waking from a habit. He reached up with that same hand and touched the headrest in front of him, where my head would be if I were taller. He tapped twice. Then he withdrew his hand. The belt stayed. On the 8th night, he pointed left where there isn't a left. I told him there wasn't. He pointed again. I turned the wheel anyway. Tires bit into mud that felt like it had been waiting. Branches scraped the roof like fingernails you didn't clip on time. My headlights found nothing, and then found a little clearing with a stump that had no tree and a ring of stones black with ash, like a ritual teenagers would try once. In the ring, a flattened circle the size of a tire. He unbuckled before we stopped. The click cut through the hum of the engine and the noise the forest makes when it resents cars. I didn't look in the mirror. The passenger airbag on light went out. He left my car without opening a door. My back seat sighed inward as if it had been asked to hold something and could finally put it down. The next night, no hitchhiker. My hands shook anyway as I drove past the spot. My eyes hunted for a jacket. Nobody was there. I did the loop, delivered the boxes, signed my name like punishment. The belt crossed at the memorial without me touching it. The light came on. The wait stayed, absurdly polite wait, a smell of rain I hadn't earned. The invisible passenger rode with me all the way to the lab, past the fountain that is off 9 months a year, under the fluorescent lights that people insist on. When I parked, the light went out and the belt eased back into its home. I sat there with my palms on the wheel, long enough for my supervisor to tap on my window and ask if I needed a minute. After that, the belt crossed when it wanted, not just on that stretch. Sometimes right outside my apartment, sometimes leaving the lab, sometimes in the middle of town at a red light with a bus beside me full of people lit in phone light. Once at noon on my day off in a grocery parking lot, as a woman pushed a cart past with a toddler. The toddler pointed at my back seat and said a word I couldn't hear through the glass. I tried to sell the car. The guy at the lot took it for a spin and came back pale and told me he doesn't buy fleet vehicles. Mine wasn't a fleet vehicle. He shrugged and said, "Still," and handed my keys back. Wrong end first, like he didn't want to touch them the normal way. I could have traded it. I didn't. It wasn't about the car. It was about what my car had become part of, like a bus route nobody asked for. If this were a different story, it would end with me helping someone, with finding a body in that clearing, or a license plate in the river, or an ID in a ditch, and a small local news story about closure with a photo of me looking away from the camera. It didn't end like that. It ended the night the belt crossed before I started the engine, and I said out loud that I was done, and the belt tightened. Not enough to hurt. Enough to say no. I froze with my hand on the key. A person can be brave about a lot of ideas in daylight and very cowed by a strap in the dark. The belt released as if offended. It crossed again. This time the latch clicked all the way into the socket by itself. I turned the engine over. The belt stayed. The passenger airbag on light came on for the front seat, and then, insultingly, the backseat belt indicator lit too. The little red icon that shames your friends into buckling. I don't know why my car even has that. He pointed without a hand. The wheel wanted to go where the wheel wanted to go. I tried to go somewhere else. The steering fought me like a grocery cart with one bad wheel. We argued like that 5 blocks. Then I made a deal with the air. I'd go where the pointing wanted me to if I could keep the speed. We went to the memorial. Ribbon moved without wind. We went to the river. Water was angry for no reason. We went to the high school lot, and the painted lines looked new. At each place, the belt didn't move, like a needle on a compass that refuses to admit you've gotten where you're going. Then we went to the clearing, the ring of stones, the black circle the size of a tire. My headlights made the wet ground sparkle like broken glass lies about glamour. The belt unbuckled itself. The passenger airbag on light went out. The smell of pennies and laundry soap untied itself from the air. I waited because it felt like something would say thank you if I was quiet enough. The only sound was the cooling engine and the wet sigh of leaves adjusting to the idea of spring. I put the car in reverse. The wheels spun. Mud politely declined to be a road. I got out and sunk to my ankles. I laughed once, a sound like a cough's embarrassed cousin, because being stuck in a clearing where your invisible passenger has chosen to leave you feels like a punchline no one else hears. I dug out the little plastic traction pads I keep because I am a man who makes lists of things that might save him. I wedged them under the tires. I tried again. I rocked. The car gave like a person who doesn't want to get up. Then it moved. Back on asphalt, my chest remembered how to be a chest. I drove home a different way without deciding to. The belt didn't cross. The night didn't smell like anything. When I parked, I sat and listened to the stillness of a car that wasn't announcing itself to me. That was 2 months ago. Since then, the belt crosses maybe once a week. Not always where it used to. Sometimes blocks away from the clearing. Sometimes on streets I haven't told anyone I drive. The finger points without a finger. God help me. And I know where to turn. Sometimes I ignore it. Sometimes the belt tightens enough to make the case for going. There's a new memorial now on the other side of town. Ribbon still bright. The photo under the plastic still smiling the way photos never deserve. I don't know the details. I don't want to. The belt didn't cross when I passed it. I expected it to. I braced for it to. It didn't. The passenger airbag on light stayed dead. I drove past and my hands remembered how they are when they're only mine. I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore. I don't need to. The car decides. When the seatbelt crosses and the buckle clicks and the sensor light turns on for a person who isn't there, I say, okay. Sometimes out loud, I go to the place the finger would have pointed if the finger still needed a body. I sit a while. I say, okay, again. Then I go back to the lab and there's no moral. I'm not cured of anything. I still count the miles between the clinic and the mall, and I still feel better when there are more lights and more cars on the road because it makes the night have to share me. But if you're out late and you see someone on the shoulder with their thumb out and your gut flips from fear to pity and back again, you can keep driving. You might still carry them. You might already be carrying them. If your dash tells you passenger airbag on when the front seat is empty, don't panic. Don't talk yourself out of what your eyes and ears are reporting. Just look in your rear view. If the back seat is occupied by something you can't see, don't be clever. Ask where they want to go. The belt will let you know. I was 19, halfway through a degree I wasn't sure I wanted, in the kind of town where the highway goes by like a river, and the students move in a loop between campus, houses with broken porches, and the 24-hour diner that tastes like regret after midnight. I had a dented Civic and a job shelving at the library where the dust was civilized. I picked up hitchhikers sometimes because it made me feel generous and because I told myself you could tell who was dangerous. That was my favorite lie that year. It was October. The air had that apple peel sharpness. I'd closed at the library and was taking the long way back to avoid a construction pinch point. Past the bus depot, I saw him, middle of the block, not at an intersection, thumb out like he meant it, backpack slung like it had learned the shape of his shoulder. He looked my age or a little older. There was something familiar about the way he stood, weight more on left than right, like he'd tweaked a knee once and never did the physical therapy. I rolled to a stop. He opened the passenger door and glanced at me, and the look on his face did something I can't name. Recognition, grief, relief, some blend that made me want to ask if I could fix anything. He slid in, buckled, set the backpack at his feet. He smelled like laundry and road and a hint of cloves, and the exact ghost of the cigarettes my older sister hid from our mother when we were kids. "Where you headed?" I asked, because that's how you start the song. "North," he said. His voice sounded like mine does when I've been talking all day and trying not to sound like I want to leave. "I can take you as far as exit 16, I said. "You need past that?" "That's fine," he said. "It's where you usually turn." He said it like someone reciting my route from a book. I chalked it up to guessing. It's the obvious exit if you live near campus. He watched my hands on the wheel like they were a test he'd taken before. The glance wasn't critical, it was memory. We passed the diner. He smiled at the neon like a person who has eaten there enough times to know which waitress will refill your coffee without being asked. "You still order that brown sauce thing," he said. The turkey open face. I laughed because my roommate makes fun of me for that exact order. "Yeah," I said. "It's cheap." He nodded. "And you tip too much when you're sad." The laugh died in my throat. "Do I know you?" He shrugged one shoulder, the one with the bag strap groove in it. "From now and then." "From now," I said. "And then." "It's a joke you made," he said. "It didn't land." I took a breath and counted to 3. My habit when I needed my brain to stop being a hummingbird. "Are you from around here?" "Yes," he said, then, as if adjusting, "Eventually." "What's your name?" I asked. "Pick one I like," he said. We drove in silence to the bridge. The river below was a flat dark, and the kind that makes your eyes want to assign depth. He watched the water pass under us and touched the dash lightly, the way you do when you're polite to machines. At the light after the bridge, he said, "You don't have to go to exit 16. You can keep straight." I know," he said. "I've been there." I pulled over, not all the way onto the shoulder, half committing to flight, half to fight. "If this is a bit," I said. "It isn't," he said, "but I don't have a way to prove it that doesn't sound like a bit." The light turned green. The car behind me didn't honk. The road and I agreed to pretend we weren't in anyone's way. "You look like my cousin," I said, "because you say stupid things when your head is a static channel. From the eyes." "I know," he said. "How?" I asked. He tapped his fingers on his knees in a pattern I recognized. 332, 332. I do it when I'm trying not to scratch at my thoughts. He looked out the window and said, "Because I know you. Because I used to be you. Silence is different at 19 than it is now. Then it was an affront. Now I can sit in it. Back then I filled it." "Okay," I said, "so this is the part where you tell me about future stuff. Lottery numbers. Who wins the series? You get very boring about evidence right here," he said, and smiled without it reaching anything above his mouth. "You list tests. I tell you something small instead. In your pocket, there's a folded receipt with the word naphthalene on it that you cannot pronounce correctly if you try 3 times with a straight face. You bought mothballs for your roommate's closet because there's a smell he thinks is mildew that you think is mice." I pulled the receipt like a card trick, and there it was. The word looked like a foreign animal. I tried to say it and failed because my mouth and my brain conspire when they want to. That's either a solid guess or proof enough to get you to stop trying to make me pass a test you only designed after you knew I'd show up. He said, "Can we keep driving? You get jumpy if you sit too long." I pulled back into the lane. I didn't go to exit 16. The road opened to that calm stretch where the city gives up trying to fill the edges and lets grass have a chance. He leaned his head against the window glass like that's how he learned to love cars. "If you're me," I said, "why do you look older?" "Because I am," he said, "by exactly as much as you think and a little less in some places you'll be proud of later." "What do you want?" I asked. "To take a ride," he said. "To tell you some things I wish someone had told me. To pay something forward. To ask you to stop picking up hitchhikers in 2 months." "Why 2 months?" "Because the person you think you're helping then is me," he said. "And because I want you to believe I'm not trying to scare you in general. I'm very specifically trying to scare you out of one night." "You could just not be there 2 months from now," I said, feeling the irritation that comes when someone else tries to schedule your life. He nodded at the windshield like it had answers, which is how I look when I pretend not to be making a face. "You're not built to skip things," he said. "You're built to show up and make dumb bargains with fate. We passed the gas station with the broken pump 3 that eats cards. He said, "You make a joke to the clerk in there in 4 days, and he laughs too hard because he needed it. You think you're very funny for 10 minutes. Do we make it stupid?" I asked. "Do we ruin it?" He half smiled. "We ruin some things," he said. "We make others. There's a girl at the library who will ask you something about interlibrary loans, and you will stutter, and she will decide she loves you anyway. That lasts a while. It's good. Then it's not. Then it teaches you something useful that hurts until it doesn't." I gripped the wheel. "This is either the strangest mugging ever or the most annoying salvation attempt you'll ever get," he said. "Either way, can you take a left up here? The sign is down. You'll want to miss it." I took the left. The road narrowed, trees leaning like tired dancers. "So what happens if I do what you want?" I asked. "You don't get in the car with that man in 2 months," he said. "You don't end up on the side of 27 with your head ringing and your backpack open in the rain, and the kind of story you tell later with a brave face, and that eats you a little each time you tell it. And if I ignore you," I said. "Then you do those things," he said. "You still make it here eventually. You come back around. It takes longer to talk to yourself. The jokes get stale." "Why hitchhiking?" I asked. "If you're me, why not show up at my door and say, 'Hey, idiot, don't'?" "I did," he said. "You weren't home." "I tried class. You skipped. I tried the diner. You chose the booth by the bathroom and left early. The highway is where we are always, and where we listen." He took a breath that sounded like when you wake from a nap you didn't mean to take. "This part is stupid," he said. "I always mess it up. The part where I tell you something about Dad." The steering wheel got smaller under my hands. "Don't," I said. "You keep the voicemail," he said, gentle. "The one where he is sober and asking about your grades, like a person who thinks the right question is going to fix it. You listen to it sometimes when you can't sleep. You start to hate the ringtone itself because it means anything could be the last thing." "Stop," I said, but there was no anger in it, just a kind of plea you give a friend. "I just wanted to say, make a copy," he said. "Mail it to yourself." The phone dies in spring. I swallowed a laugh because that is the exact sort of practical prophecy I want from any ghost. "Okay," I said. We drove. He didn't try to fill the air. He let me be alone with the version of me sitting 3 feet to my right. In the reflection in the passenger window, I could almost see my own head when I glanced. Older around the eyes, thinner in the mouth. He touched the dashboard again at a crack I'd been meaning to fill with one of those kits you buy and never use. He smiled at the familiar damage. "You said you'd driven me before," I said. "When?" He looked out at the dark fields. "After the hospital," he said, "when we thought we could go back to work too soon. You lasted 60 minutes. I found you on the off-ramp." "Which hospital?" I said, stupidly, as if there are not that many. "You'll know," he said. "It's the one that smells like lemon and forgotten socks." We crossed a county line sign that someone had decorated with stickers. He reached into the backpack and pulled out something carefully wrapped in a grocery bag. "I brought this because you always want proof," he said, and handed me the bundle. At the next stop sign, I opened it. Inside, a library book. The barcode strip had our branch code. The stamp on the inside cover had my initials, where we initial when we fix a torn page with tape. The due date was last year, a date we hadn't reached yet. On the back cover, in my handwriting, an apology to a future patron for the coffee stain I hadn't actually made. I know my own pen pressure. I know where my letters lean. "You could have stolen this," I said feebly. "I did," he said, "from us." "You sound bored," I said. "I'm tired," he said, and there was no bitterness in it. "It takes a lot to get back here, to the place where you listen. I always make jokes right here. I tell you not to pick up strange men. You laugh, I laugh. It feels normal for a minute." We hit the light at the on-ramp. It was red, even though no one was there. He said, "Take the ramp and then loop back." "I don't want to screw the path up. It's fragile." "Path to what?" I asked. To the part where I still become me, he said. Even if you don't become me. Don't think about it too hard. That's how you get stuck. Are there others? I said, like us? Yes, he said, but we're enough right now. We merged. The Civic did its best impression of a machine that was confident. We took the next exit and came back around. I realized we were back near the bus depot, near where I'd stopped. He shifted in the seat like a runner about to stand at a finish line after convincing himself that starting was the worst part. You'll want to follow me, he said. You'll think if you keep me in sight, you can keep both of us from becoming anything we don't want. Don't. It makes it worse. It makes it later. What happens to you? I asked, hitting the brakes a touch too hard as the light went amber, as if I needed a reason to stop. I keep going, he said. I do this again. Sometimes you yell. Sometimes you cry. Sometimes you ask for the lottery numbers anyway, and I make up 6 on principle. Sometimes you give me $20 because you think that will make me less sad later. I buy the turkey open face and hate us for being predictable. I wanted to ask about the worst things and the best. I wanted to ask if I turn into someone my mother would be proud to know. I wanted to ask if my car makes it through another winter, or if I should start saving now. I wanted to ask if I ever stop flinching when the phone rings after midnight. He reached for the handle. Don't be on 27 2 months from now after 11, he said. Listen to the shuffle in your own head and go the way it wants, not the way you planned. And if I see you there anyway, I said. Pick me up, he said, and then smiled in a way I recognized, in the way I smile when I decide to be ridiculous on purpose to make someone have to react. Or don't. I'll get where I'm going. I always do. He stepped out. He didn't shut the door right away. He leaned down like a person leaning into a car, the way friends do. He touched the frame above the window with a small tap, the way I do for luck. He whispered almost to himself, "You make it, you idiot," and closed the door gently. I watched him in the mirror walk to the curb and turn left, then right, then disappear into the kind of night that looks like the inside of your eyelids. I sat at the light until it changed twice. I drove home and took the receipt with the word I couldn't say and put it in a book because I became sentimental about proof in a way I couldn't admit to anyone. 2 months later, I did what he asked and didn't take 27 after 11. I told myself I was not scared, just late. Someone else crashed that night, according to the paper. Different car, different mile marker. The photo showed a shape under a tarp and a shoe in the road. I put the paper in recycling and then took it back out and folded it and put it in the same book as the receipt. I didn't know why I was doing any of that. Last year, I was driving past the bus depot in a car that is not the Civic. It was October again. The air had the same apple peel bite. A kid about my age then stood with his thumb out like he believed in the benevolence of old stories. I stopped. He looked at me like grief and recognition had learned to live together. He slid in. He smelled like laundry and road and cloves. He asked, "Where you headed?" And I said, "North." And I heard my voice say it wrong and right at the same time. I told myself all the things I swore I'd say differently. I didn't say them differently. If you pick up a stranger who knows your order and your route and where your knee hurts, you can decide not to believe him. It won't matter. Believe him anyway. Skip 27 after 11. Make a copy of the voicemail you love. Pay with cash at the diner because you get to decide if your life is ever traceable when something goes wrong. And if someone ever tells you they've driven you before, don't argue. Just drive. You'll both end up where you're going either way. The only thing you get to choose is how much you hate yourself between here and there. I've been hauling long enough that the road feels like a person. It breathes when the weather changes. It sighs when a day's gone wrong. It has a temper at dawn. I haul refrigerated and dry, mostly Midwest to Northeast. 2 nights out, 1 night home. Repeat. I like the shape of it. The line on the map looks like a sentence. The woman by mile marker 143 looked like a mistake. Not because of her, but because of the storm. You don't stand out in a March squall unless you have to, or you don't know how not to anymore. The rain made a gray sheet of the world. Wipers were on frantic. The CB was one long apology from 1,000 drivers saying they should have stopped 2 miles ago. I saw her in the right teeth of the high beams. White dress soaked to the knees, hair stuck to her face, thumb out in that way no one does now. There was nowhere safe to stop unless you have a rig and arrogance. I have both. I put the hazards on, and the trailer fishtailed a hair, and I corrected, and the whole thing felt like a breath I didn't take. She climbed in like someone who has climbed into trucks before. No hesitation, no looking back like the road might change its mind. She sat straight, hands in lap, eyes on windshield. She didn't shiver, which I noticed after. At the time, I was too busy feeling the way the weight shifted and how my steering had picked up a whisper you only hear when you've got someone beside you that changes how you drive. "You okay?" I asked, which is stupid because nobody who is okay is on a highway shoulder in March in a dress that belonged to summer. "I need a ride home," she said, like a child asking for what they've already earned. "Where's home?" I asked. She told me an exit in a street and a house number that felt like someone's idea of a prayer. The address was 2 exits shy of where I would stop for the night. Easy. The CB coughed. A voice I half know from years of other people's radios said to watch for ponding in the left lane. The storm leaned towards us like a person who wants to tell you a secret. "Bad night to be out," I said. "Bad night to be late," she said. We rode with the kind of silence I liked best. There, not punishing. I kept the speed just under sensible because hydroplaning is for people who have not yet felt their own rig skate. She stared straight ahead and occasionally touched the door handle like she was reminding herself how doors work. Her dress had a pattern that rain turned to field. Her hair looked dark and then light and then dark, depending on the lightning. "What's your name?" I asked, because company helps the miles. She told me a name I won't put here. It fits in your mouth like a small stone. I said mine. She nodded like the information made the truck accept us both a little better. We passed through the part of the storm that feels like standing too close to a waterfall. The sound on the roof became a geography. "Thank you," she said, somewhere near the county line, "for stopping." "Sure," I said. "Not a night to leave someone out." "Some people do," she said. We came up on the exit. I took it. The ramp was a curve that wanted to be taken too fast. I did not. The street off the ramp runs down into a neighborhood of houses that look like they were built in a hurry during a time money didn't always notice. She gave me rights and lefts without looking at me. That was my first real prick of wrong. Most people glance. They don't want to seem like they're bossing your giant around. She trusted the truck, or she didn't care what it could do. We pulled up to a house that had the porch light on and a flag that had given up being a flag years ago, but still hung like effort. She said, "Here," with relief. "You want me to walk you to the door?" I asked, already unbuckling one shoulder because once you're a dad, you can't stop. She didn't look at me, but the muscles at her jaw moved. "No," she said, "you shouldn't." The porch light clicked brighter, as if a sensor had finally gotten the joke. The front door opened and a man in a sweatshirt stepped out into the rectangle of light. He squinted the way people do when they can't make shapes into names. I rolled the window down halfway and stuck my head out into rain that wanted me to go back inside. "Evening," I called. "Brought someone home." His face changed fast. Relief, confusion, and a kind of grief that looks like anger does after it tires. "Who?" he asked, just that one word, as if categories mattered more than names. The passenger door opened before I could say. She climbed down and the storm touched her like hands that know exactly how to be cruel and not wet. She walked to the porch, slow and then fast, and then slow again. Like the gravity near the house wasn't the same as the road, the man stepped back. He put his hand to the door frame like he needed to feel wood to believe in anything. She stopped 3 feet away. They stayed like that for a second you can call holy if you want to. Then she turned. She looked straight at me through the rain and the light, not angry, not grateful. Something like apology's parent. She lifted her hand in a wave that didn't need my answer, and then she walked into the house. The man didn't reach for her. He couldn't have. The door closed. The porch light went back to being a tired star. I sat there longer than a man in a truck should. The street light at the corner flickered like it wanted to comment. The CB popped, with someone telling a story about a deer that wasn't a deer. I put the truck in gear. I eased away. 2 miles down the road, my phone buzzed in the console. I don't check texts when I drive. I am not the villain in someone else's story. I pulled into the truck stop I was going to anyway for the night and parked and felt the rig settle like a dog that's earned it. I looked at my phone. Unknown number, thank you. I tried to call back because I am older than texts. It didn't ring. It went to a fast busy that feels like someone hanging up before they hear the whole sentence. I slept in the cab like always. The storm ran out of energy around 3. At 5, the garbage truck at the stop started its morning noises like ritual. Got coffee that tasted like cardboard and heart and went outside to walk a circle to convince my joints they still loved me. The pump island was a mirror in the dawn. I went to wipe the glass on the passenger side out of habit and saw watermarks on the seat that looked like hands. Not prints, just the shape water makes when it dries where someone sat. Dashcam footage has saved my butt twice. It points forward, wide angle, not perfect, but enough. I pulled the card and loaded it into my phone because I was still in the parking lot and couldn't wait to get home to the computer. I cued the time from when I pulled onto the shoulder. The camera showed rain, road, my headlights, and an empty shoulder. Then me slowing, hazards ticking. Then the passenger door opening by itself and closing by itself like trucks do in stories. The seat beside me, empty. I watched the whole ride again through the chip eye and saw a man talking to air. Saw the door open and close. Saw rain hit nothing where she had been. I told myself it was glare. I told myself the chip got confused by water. I told myself anything. Around noon, because I couldn't not, I drove back to the house with the flag. The storm had polished the street, the porch light was off, I parked the truck illegally because big machines aren't welcome in small worlds, and I was past the point of politeness. The man opened the door at the first knock. I had the look he recognized from the night men bring news to doors. He asked if he could help. I told him I had given a ride to a woman last night and said her name. The porch seemed to tilt. He closed his eyes like a person standing in the first wind from a train. He opened them and nodded me in because some stories can't be told to men in hats and anyone watching or to neighbors with opinions. He took me to the kitchen and offered me water that tasted like a recent argument. He sat, I stood, he started. My daughter, he said. She died 10 years ago on that road, the storm. She was coming home from choir. We had the porch light on. We always do when anyone's late. She came home, I said, because my mouth didn't care what my brain was doing. He shook his head. A lot of people come home, he said, and his voice didn't crack the way men's voices do when they are training them not to. Sometimes they use my porch as a stop. Sometimes they ask for her by name. Sometimes they say she asked to come here. They always look like they've seen God or something that doesn't need to be good to be big. I saw her, I said, and the water in my mouth tasted like rust because I had said it and the world had not corrected me. He nodded. I don't ask for proof, he said. I used to. I don't anymore. Sometimes they bring something, a scarf, a barrette that smells like rain. We have a drawer. He opened a drawer by the refrigerator. Inside, small things that wouldn't survive a catalog. Half a friendship bracelet, a plastic ring, a clump of hairpins the color of midnight, He held them like a priest with relics for a faith that only needs one believer. "Why me?" I asked, because if you're going to take the weight, you want to pretend there's a reason. He shrugged and said, "You stopped." Then, as if it might be medicine, "She liked trucks. They felt safe. I asked to see a photo because my head needed to dye the shape with a color, and my heart needed to be punished." He brought a frame from the mantel, her, hair in the light I'd seen turn into rain, a dress that might have been the one soaked to her knees. I didn't want to make a sound. I did anyway. He put the photo back like it had a weight you have to manage. He thanked me like I'd delivered a package. I left. On the way back to the yard, I called my dispatcher and said I needed 2 days. He said, "Take 1. I parked the rig and went to the little church by the truck stop that keeps its lights on for people who talk to God only when everything else fails. I sat in the last pew and folded my hands like muscle memory and counted breaths. That night, it rained again. I went out because that's what we do when we get one step into a story and decide we might as well get the shoes wet. I went to mile marker 143 and pulled onto the shoulder and put the hazards on. I waited. She was there when the rain finally decided to make sheets. Same place, same dress, same thumb. I didn't make her stand in the rain while I argued with my better sense. I opened the passenger door and she got in and didn't shiver. "You're late," she said, like a joke between family. "I stopped for a man's drawer," I said. "It had your hairpins." She looked at me then, not through me. Her eyes had the green that disappears on cloudy days. "You saw," she said. "I did," I said, and my voice remembered how to be a voice for a second. "Good," she said. We rode. We didn't talk about the river of headlights going the other way, or the brake lights that looked like a wound that never heals in the same place twice. At her house, the porch light was on. A dog barked somewhere down the block at the wrong thing. She didn't ask me to walk her. I didn't offer. She got out. She didn't wave this time. She looked at the house like you look at a window you once climbed out of and think you could again if you needed to. The dash cam showed me alone, the seat dried by morning. The unknown number texted "thank you" again, and this time I didn't try to call back. I let the thanks sit on the screen until the battery warning made me put the phone down and sleep. My company's black box logs, stops and starts. I got a call from safety a week later asking why I had an unauthorized stop in heavy rain twice at the same mile marker. I told the truth in a way that wouldn't get me sent for a drug test. I said I had helped someone. The man on the line said, "Watch for ponding in the left lane on that stretch," and I realized the voice that had warned me during the storm was his. It made me feel safe to think people could be in two kinds of helpful at once. Months passed. Spring and its idiot birds. Summer heat that makes your seatbelt buckles brand you if you don't warn your passengers. I stopped less often. Not because weather obeyed calendars. Because grief ebbs. Because life crowds in with other tasks. Because I am a man who goes where the line on the dispatch tells me. In October, the kind of rain that feels personal found me again. I thought of mile 143 and turned the radio down. I told myself I would not stop. I told myself ghosts don't need the help of men who carry cold freight to hospitals. I told myself a lot. She wasn't there. That felt worse. I drove 3 miles past, and the guilt became louder than weather. I took the next median pull-through, illegal and slow, and came back. She was there. The relief I felt was the kind of relief you don't brag about. It felt like a sin to be thankful a dead girl had kept to a schedule. She got in. She smelled like the pond by my childhood house smells. The first day the algae dies. We made the turns. The porch light was out. She touched the dash for the first time. A pat like the way my mother touches the kitchen counter when she knows she's going to have to stand there a while. We stopped. "Can I ask you a question?" I said, as if permission applies. "You can," she said. You won't like the answer. Do you know your... She looked at me, and the look stopped words. I know you are, she said. I'm... What? I asked, because I had lost the thread of graceful language. Late, she said, like always. She got out. The porch light came on by itself when her foot hit the first step. The door did not open. She stood there, not looking. I wanted to honk, to wake the man inside. I didn't. She turned, and this time she waved, and it looked like forgiveness. For me or for the timing of weather, I don't know. The next day, I drove to the county office and asked for accident reports from a year that makes my hands hurt to think about. The clerk gave me a look for bringing the storm inside with me, and then made a copy of the one I wanted and put it face down on the counter. Like she didn't want to see it either. It said what I knew. It said what I didn't. It said time of collision, response time, cause. It said hydroplaning. It said no seatbelt. In a little box that felt bigger than it was, it said Vehicle 1, blue pickup. It had a make and model and a year. It had a partial plate. The partial plate matched a truck my father drove until the engine coughed permanently. I sat on a plastic chair in the county office lobby and counted the holes in the ceiling tile until my eyes didn't try to blur them into the wholeness my heart wanted. I went home. I went to the box of things you keep from people who don't live with you anymore. I found a photo with a flag in the background that could have been the same neighborhood in a truck that could have been the one in the report. I put the photo back because I am not ready to move that many atoms yet. You want there to be a shape you can live with. I wanted to make the story neat. I wanted to be the trucker who gives a last ride and learns a lesson and goes on a talk show that doesn't exist anymore. The truth is I keep stopping, sometimes at 1:43, sometimes 2 miles past, because sometimes that's where the storm decided to be mean. Sometimes not at all, because I am tired and human, and the road more than any person decides. The dash cam shows me alone. The seat dries by morning. Sometimes the unknown number texts. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I look at the texts and the words look like my own voice, if that makes sense. Sometimes I listen to the CB and someone says something about a woman by the side of the road and the rest of us don't laugh. A new driver asked me last week if I ever pick up hitchhikers. I started to say no because company policy would like me to do that. I said, sometimes, instead, when it's raining. He said he heard a story about a woman in white who flags down trucks and then vanishes when you reach her drive. I told him the story is older than me and him and the road itself. He said he doesn't stop. I nodded because safety is a gospel too. When it rains and I see a shape at the edge of my high beams, I signal even when I don't need to. I put the hazards on too early. I prepare the story to be both real and not. She climbs in. We drive. We don't talk much. I take the turns she knows by heart. The porch light learns to come on in time. She gets out. Sometimes she waves. Sometimes she doesn't. I sit there with my hands on the wheel like a man at prayer. Then I go. I don't expect anyone to believe me. If you're out there in your own way and a storm decides it wants to practice on you, and there's a shape in the rain that looks like someone who has been waiting too long, stop if you can. If you can't, don't make a wish like I do, because wishes make you think you control anything. Just drive safe. Hold your loved ones. Check your tires before trips, and don't let your porch light burn out if you're the kind of person who is waiting. If you keep the dash cam, don't expect it to make this story polite. 10 years is a long time for a house to wait at a window. 10 years is short for a road. Some nights the line on the map looks like a sentence that knows how it ends. Some nights it looks like a promise. I keep the truck clean now, not because I care what anyone thinks, but because when she sits, the seat never squeaks at me anymore. Some nights when it's late and the rain gets brave, I answer texts from a number I can't save. They always say the same thing. Thank you. And that's enough. Thanks for listening. I really enjoyed putting these stories together for you. If you liked it, hit that like button, subscribe for more stories, and share it with someone who's into this kind of stuff. See you next time.